Welcome to WVTC TV Network, capturing family moments in real time, bringing families closer together from the comforts of home. We are unleashing something different to the world. Start your subscription today for the low price of $4.99 per month or $55 annually. Go to www.wvtctvnetwork.com to sign up today. WVTC TV Network is streaming live on 8 different platforms. You can easily download the WVTC TV Network app on the Apple Store, Play Store, Roku, Fire TV, and more. Here at WVTC TV, we have access to movies that everyone can enjoy, including independent films, Sons of a Preacher and a Good Thing, Treasures of Life, the epic drama, The Passion of the Christ, and the box office hit Madagascar Escape to Africa. Remember, go to www.wvtctvnetwork.com and sign up today.
Hi there, fam. Welcome back to You Plant, We Water, second episode. I'm so grateful for those of you that are tuning in, whether you're watching us live or you're going to watch this later. We couldn't do this without you. Just as a reminder, this is a show about combining our faith, mental health, and how to enhance relationship satisfaction. So in this corner of the world, we're going to dive deep into love, connection, communication, conflict resolution, you name it. This is the space where we're going to cover it. I want to briefly remind you, last week we started by talking about the 5 love languages, and there was a question that was submitted afterwards that I would love to address. So I'm going to start by doing that, and then I'm going to introduce you to our special guest, whom I know quite well. Honestly, I've known her whole life. But before we get there, so last week we were talking about the 5 love languages, and a question came in asking, was there any rank order to the love languages, right? Like, was there one particular love language that was more important than another? Excellent question. So thank you for submitting that. And the answer is no, right? Because each of us is unique and different, and there isn't, whether it's words or quality time, one isn't any better than the other. It's just different. It's just a different way of expressing love. Much like with an actual language, Spanish isn't better than English, which isn't better than French. Of course, if you speak one of those, you may feel a little biased, but right, it's the same kind of concept. So thank you for that question. We now have a Facebook page, so please check us out and be sure to subscribe to You Plant, We Water. Follow us there so you can receive notifications. Likewise, you can submit your questions there, and I will be happy to answer them here live. All right. Having said all that, without further ado, I am going to introduce you to our special guest. And today we are actually going to be talking about spiritual counseling versus mental health counseling, right? We're going to have an intimate conversation about everything you need to know to distinguish what is what, when to get what, and even just talking about some of the problems or issues that we see in both worlds, right? So having said that, I'd like to introduce to you none other than Minister Trisha Flowers, who just so happens to be my blood-related sister, but she is an expert in her own right, and I'm going to allow her to briefly share a little bit about what brings her here and who she is, and then we're going to dive right in.
So thank you for having me first off. And your first show was amazing. So I want to congratulate you for that. And my name again is Trisha Flowers. I'm a minister. I have a degree and a master's in divinity. I am ordained. And as a family, we believe in counseling overall. So we feel like we have to help you spiritually, mentally, and physically. And that's what we would love to share with you today.
Absolutely. So it's interesting that Trisha and I have been having these conversations really probably our whole lives, but especially as adults with our unique backgrounds, we have these conversations and we used to joke and say, oh, we should put these on social media so other people can hear. Here we are. So let's talk about it. Let's chop it up a little bit. So Trisha has a background with, again, faith, spirituality, being an ordained minister. And as you know, I'm a licensed professional counselor with a PhD in counseling and a professor of counseling as well. So to introduce us, right, I'm going to give you some little stats, right? So they did a survey of the United States, and they were just trying to get a feel for all kind of information about people who live here. And one of the pieces they were trying to find out how spiritual was the average United States American. And what they discovered is the most spiritual or religious people on the planet are Black or African American people, right? We are highly spiritual and religious. In fact, the stats were so high that 9 out of 10, that means 90% of Black or African Americans are going to identify as being religious or spiritual. Now, why do I say this? Because what we are taught in my field is that if you are working with a Black or African American couple in particular, the first place they are going to go for help, and not just a couple, I should say individual, the first place they're likely to go for help if they're having issues is the church, which is beautiful, right? So we kind of know that. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what happens, right? So tell us just a little bit about your experience, like your training related to, you can talk about counseling, or you can just start talking about what do you think about what should happen when people come looking for counsel for.
So I have expertise on this because one, I needed spiritual counseling as well as regular counseling from my life experience. So when we're in theology, we are strictly told we are not supposed to give out counseling other than spiritual counseling. We're not supposed to give out DSM, I don't know what number yet.
Five.
When I was in school, we were like 3 or 4.
True.
We are not supposed to diagnose people.
Right.
I am here to make sure that you're whole spiritually. So I'm going to give you scriptures to help in your prayer life. And I can refer you out to someone like Dr. Toya Flowers Rowe. So when we do those things, we begin to minister to people. We meet you where you're at. That's the number one thing.
Right.
So if a woman, I'll use myself for an example. When I lost my daughter, I had to get counseling. So it started off with pastoral counseling, and that's where they met me where I was at. So I had to figure out what was going on. And the truth of the matter for me was I was angry with God. I felt like he had forsaken me, and there was no other person in the world that could experience this because it was just happening to me. The funny part about that is if you're a Christian, Jesus Christ experienced that, and God himself had to lose his child. So that was one of the breaking points for me, where I was like, okay, maybe I'm having a little bit of a pity party. And being forgetful in the fact that God had to lose his son. So what better place would it have been for me to understand that I wasn't the only one, and that spirituality is what kind of helped me. It didn't kind of help. It helped me go to the next level. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I also had to go to grief counseling, which the spiritual part would not have gotten me to the point where I was made completely whole. So we had to unpack several things, because I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know I was angry with that.
Right.
So
that's honest. Yeah.
I didn't know. But as I began to go through the counseling and the pastoral counseling, they were hitting on topics, and it was like, oh, okay. And then when I was going to counseling for grief counseling, they were also, so it was like mending me back together. And this is why it was so important for me to do pastoral counseling for other people, because I know that if you are spiritually based, you can't hear if it's not coming from whatever source you're praying to. So it's very important.
Yes. Oh, so you said so much there, right? I love what you said about God losing his only child, right? And the way that kind of helped you process and begin to work through even the grief, even though you were going to ultimately seek mental health counseling to really dive deep into that. And I love that, because often in my field, the truth is there is a little bit of tension between faith and mental health, right? There's this misbelief that if you have enough faith or belief in God, that you won't need mental health counseling, which I want to say can absolutely be true. And I'm going to share my favorite analogy with you all as we talk about it more. That 100%, that is true. There is nothing impossible for God. That which is impossible with men is possible with God, right? So I stand on that and agree wholeheartedly. And at the same time, sometimes we don't know where our healing will come from, because faith without works is dead. So I'm going to share this example. If you were going to get knee surgery, for example, you're going to go to a surgeon. And I think very few of us would say, I have so much faith, I don't want any anesthesia. Just go in, right? No, you're probably going to go ahead and get the anesthesia. And that's the same with mental health. If you need the support, just because it's something you can't physically touch doesn't mean it's real. We're made of mind, body, and soul. So this is the mind, the mental health piece. So back to your point, Trisha, about how you moved into both. You started with the spiritual counseling by getting pastoral counseling, and then from there transitioned to grief counseling. Was that the idea of the pastor that you were working with? Were you referred out, or kind of, and you say as much or as little about your process as you feel comfortable, because this is your life and that's their life as well. So we can also talk more general.
Yes. So for me, I went through the pastoral part first, and then I was referred out, because we're taught, being a minister, we're taught that we cannot, and I love the Lord, just so we know that. Amen. But we can't, there's certain things we can't touch on. And that's because I'm stepping on another person's profession, right? I'm only ordained in what I know, and I can't decide, or like I said, I can't diagnose people. I can say, hey, it seems like you might be depressed, and then I refer you out to someone else. But what happens a lot of times with pastoral counseling, we begin to diagnose, and that's not something that we should be doing. It's not good. That's something that we were told immediately don't do. Now, me going through this crisis myself and being the person that was on the other end of it, I can see how they overlap.
Right.
But there has to be a balance, and we have to both respect each other's professions, right? So kind of like your analogy with the knee. If you get your knee surgery, they now refer you out to somebody else to help build. So you get rehabilitation. The rehabilitation doctor is not the surgeon. And so if I am overstepping by doing too much, and I'm not doing what I'm called to do, I'm out of order, right? I'm being disobedient. So that's the spirituality part. I'm no longer doing what God has ordained me to do. now I've become a counselor.
And relatedly, on our end, right? So when we are training individuals to become counselors, we let them know, regardless of their beliefs, whether they believe in God or not, if that client comes into that room and they are a believer, then you are going to tap into that. I don't care what the counselor believes. It doesn't matter. It's about that client, because even the science knows that faith works, right? That it is healing. And so we train our counselors that, the client comes in and they say, I'm a believer, I go to this church. Then you build that into their treatment. You check in with them. How often are you praying? Do you want us to read Bible scriptures? Now, we're not stepping into spiritual counseling because we have no knowledge of that and we have not been called to be pastors. But what we're doing is helping support our client to make sure they're using all the resources they have in their life. So their faith and spirituality is definitely a resource. Their family might be another resource, things like that. So as we talk about this, let's loosen up and have a little more fun, because this was a hot topic when we were in the parking lot of Chick-fil-A. Now we're like, ooh. But so what I want to touch on, you saw a really cool example on Facebook that's about the here and now. And we were saying, we should talk about that to kind of help illustrate the points a little bit.
So the example that I saw, which we all have been touched in some way by the election. And this example was a real life situation. Yeah. So the situation, you guys may see it because it's a social media thing. There was a family that was married and the wife was going to divorce her husband. And she wanted to divorce her husband because they had different political beliefs. And with that being said, there was tension in the relationship. And the guy was saying, well, we were doing so well. And, things were going well. And what do I do to save my relationship? What can be done? And so I brought it to Dr. Flowers to find out what her opinion is. And then I'll give my opinion, and then we'll kind of bring it together.
Right. So this is so interesting. So these people are on the verge of divorce because they voted for two different candidates. Right. And so from my perspective, what I would do, and when we kind of talked about it in reverse, but I could go first. From if they come to see a mental health counselor, we are going to really dive deep into helping them to understand that they can have opposing political views, right? But that doesn't necessarily have to be the end of their marriage, and helping them to find the middle ground. And by the middle ground, just really talking through the history of their relationship, what brought them to this point. How did they get to a place where they see a fork in the road, where one is voting for the Republican candidate and the other is voting for the Democratic candidate, right? What does that mean? Why is this such a sticking point that the wife is feeling like, I'm done. I'm willing to throw it all away at this point? Because I'm going to transition to Trisha, because what we do know is that God does hate divorce. So we want to work with that couple to really make sure they're thinking through this.
And this goes back to the spirituality part. So one of the things are trying to figure out, are you guys equally yoked? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like? And so in the pastoral part, we want to ask questions like, are there any other issues besides this one that created the split? And we want to work on, hopefully keeping the marriage together. But if that's not possible, or, there's more that needs to be done, and that's just the symptom, it was, this election and now I'm done with everything. We need to go further into that. And we would give scriptures that support how you can, love someone that is not doing what you would say, which, in marriages, we do not always do what the other person wants or agree. We're sisters and we don't always agree. So there's, so that's the thing that we would do. And we would talk more about the similarities that they have and coming together, and prayer. So you touched on that. Prayer absolutely changes things. And so that is, as a pastoral counselor, that is the one thing that we do immediately. It was to go into prayer and we ask and we seek answers from the Most High. And then we began to talk and we worked things out that way.
Right. So just to clarify, how would a couple, if they were having this situation, how would they know who to see? As a believer, I say definitely see your pastor first, right? First and foremost, see your pastor, and they know and have the training and the what am I trying to say? Not even that. Like, I'm trying to say more like the wisdom and knowledge,
Okay.
right? Discernment. They will have the discernment to hopefully know when to refer out. And I would say, from my lens, when you come to see us, so like when you go to your pastor, they're going to really be more likely rooting for you all, really trying to help you save the marriage, right? And from my lens, we are happy to say we are also rooting for the marriage, but we are, because we're licensed by the state, I can't overstep in any way. So if one of you is saying, nope, I just want you to help us in this marriage in a polite, amicable way, then I have to honor that and try to find the middle ground. I can't say what I just said, like God hates divorce. I can't say that. I have to say, okay, so I understand you, Mr. X, are wanting to stay in the marriage, and you, Mrs. X, are wanting to get out and want to work on just how to end it peacefully. Why don't we together come up with some goals for the time that I have you here? Okay, so that's what I do. Now, inside, I like people to know, as a counselor, a mental health counselor who is a believer, inside, I'm rooting for that marriage. I want to see all marriages preserved. And I pray for my clients, right? I pray for all of my clients. I may not be able to pray with them because they may not have the same beliefs and it may not be appropriate, but I do pray for them. Let's see, this is going faster with two people. So we wrapping up. What else would you want to say just about spiritual versus mental health counseling? Maybe respecting each of the disciplines or anything, whatever comes to mind.
For me personally, I think that it's always good to respect disciplines because it gives credibility to each, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a person who is a believer and I needed to get counseling, that I can speak to that. And I'm not just telling you, because a lot of times people don't do counseling because they feel like we're pointing a finger, it's something wrong with you, da, 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 da. That's not really the case. We're just trying to get you whole, which is spiritual and regular counseling. And if we need to do the things that are going to make you whole. And so it is important to respect other people. This is not a topic that has really been touched on because on the pastoral side, it is in some of our communities, we don't always think you need counseling. So it's kind of taboo. And so this is something that I really wanted to talk about because sometimes it's a little more complicated than just a scripture. You may be really dealing with depression. You may need real resources that I'm not able to give to you.
Well said. And even with the example that we use, while it seems like it's just about the candidates, there could be something more there. One of the members of the couple might have something that requires a diagnosis. They might have bipolar or something like that, which is where the mental health piece comes in because there may be medications that are needed. We might need to go into some of these really hard, no, I'm saying hardcore, but they're not hardcore, but some of these theories and therapies that we provide, like CBT and things like that, to really help address something that's not well, right? That is impacting the couple relationship. So I love that you shared your thoughts on that. I'm going to let you know, as a professor, I've taught at seminaries, and I've taught mental health counseling at seminaries, and it goes both ways. Some of my students would come into this thinking they want to be a licensed therapist. And what would happen, what we would discover as they were going through the process is that no, their calling truly was to be a pastor. And so, or to offer pastoral counseling. And so we would help them transition into that based off whatever that calling was. So again, if you have questions, let us know. You can do so now, or you can visit our Facebook page, You Plant, We Water, and put your questions there. Oh, love that. So First,
So I'm sorry, I'm new
love
to what did I learn during my grief counseling?
That's a good
I
question.
learned that it's okay to seek support. It's
Hmm.
okay to get the tools necessary to mend you back together, right? Because what we don't want is extended grief. And we don't talk about that. So when you don't address things, you bottle
Ooh,
it up
yes.
and you begin to kind of like mask, and it makes it so much harder. So I am so thankful for the pastor that told me, hey, it seems like you're really dealing with this in a way that's not healthy for you. So that's the takeaway that I got. It helped me become whole. I learned that it's okay to seek resources. It's okay to need help. And it's also my number one thing, which my sister would speak to, is prayer changes things. That
Yes.
was my prayer being answered, was the
Yes.
grief counseling. That's how I was able to move past and not forget, but be present.
Yes. I love it. That was such a good question. So thank you for that. And as you said, there are things that once you move into mental health counseling, we will look at, and you pointed it out. There's grief, and then there's something called complicated grief, which moves into a different type of diagnosis. I was guilty of just shutting down and not saying anything. That's right, Latrice, you're not alone, right? That is what a lot of us do. Even so much, sometimes when we're dealing with some mental health crises, we may not have a diagnosis, but something has happened, like you've been laid off or you just took a hit. And I know I've said it. I've said it to myself. I've said it to my kids. I've recommended it. And I'll just say, you know what? You need to just go and lay down. All right. That's the first thing I'm thinking. You just need to lay down. And that does help. And we can do some more and begin a process of really trying to tackle some of this, because what happens, to your point, when we don't, things get layered upon each other. So now you got maybe you've lost a loved one, and then you're not doing well at your job. And so now your job is in jeopardy. Now your relationship, there's strain there now because there's financial issues. The kids aren't doing well in school. So it can all kind of come in and cave in on you. And it's those of us in the mental health profession, we are here to help. And so thank you again for tuning in, for your comments. Please remember to tune back in, to visit our Facebook page for more information and to find out our next topics.
I am so sorry, guys. This is the fun part about being live. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me. And again, thank you for the success. Latrice, that was an awesome question that you gave out. And we want more of that. We want more communication with us because it helps us to better be able to water you guys. So thank you.
Yes, as she said. So thank you again for tuning into You Plant, We Water, where we are trying to help enhance relationships, one relationship at a time. Thanks, y'all.